This is Federalist 42, Part 5. We're going to start with paragraph 15. Before I do that, I have already shown you some of different editions of the Federalist Papers. This happens to be the one by Cambridge University Press. There are other ones that I've shown you, and I have suggested that if you can, whenever that is possible for you, to look at the introductions by different editors of these different issues of Federalist Papers, or different editions, I'm sorry. So this one has an introduction. It's a good introduction. The one that I am reading from right now, let me show it to you. This one is by J.R. Pohl, and it's by Hackett Publishing Company. I've mentioned it before. This is really good. It's got good footnotes. And there are lots of other editions available. So if you can, at least read the introductions given by different scholars who have edited these papers. And here they've included some of the letters of Brutus, who happens to be one of the best, one of the most important anti-Federalists. His articles and papers criticizing the Federalist Papers were very powerful. Okay, I'll start with paragraph 15. Now, this paragraph is going to talk about things that are would be very obvious to you. If you have come to the United States or you're coming to the United States, you don't want to go to different states and let states decide what you have to do to become a citizen. Because then you'll have 50 different regulations, 50 different requirements, 50 different applications. And then what if you become a citizen in one state and go to another state and they say, sorry, we don't consider you a citizen because you've not been here so many years, or this is our law. Because of that, the Constitution says that that has to be left to the federal government. And this is what this next paragraph is going to talk about. That this similarity in the rules of naturalization has long been remarked as a fault in our system and as laying a foundation for intricate and delicate questions. In the 4th article of the Confederation, it is declared that the free inhabitants of each of these states, paupers, vagabonds, and fugitives from justice excepted, shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of free citizens in the several states, and the people of each state shall in every other enjoy all the privileges of trade and commerce. There is a confusion of language here, which is remarkable. Remember, I said this is one of those papers that he constantly criticizes the way their old Constitution was written. He says it's not clear. For example, he says, why the terms free inhabitants are used in one part of the article, free citizens in another, and people in another, or what was meant by superadding to all privileges and immunities of free citizens. All the privileges of trade and commerce cannot be easily determined. It seems to be a construction scarcely avoidable. However, that those who come under denomination of free inhabitants of a state, although not citizens of such state, are entitled in every other state to all the privileges of free citizens of the latter, that is, to greater privileges than they may be entitled in their own state, so that it may be in the power of a particular state, or rather every state is laid under a necessity not only to confer the rights of citizenship in other states upon any whom it may admit to such rights within itself, but upon any whom it might allow to become inhabitants within its jurisdiction. So he's saying that the language there is very confusing. And then who wants to deal with going to one state and following their requirements just to find out a year later that when they move to another state that according to the new state they're not citizens? This is crazy. But were an exposition of the term inhabitants to be admitted, which would confine the stipulated privileges to citizens alone, the difficulty is diminished only, not removed. The difficulty is diminished only, not removed. The very improper power would still be retained by each state of naturalizing aliens in every other state. Aliens here is resident alien, people who are not citizens, they're called resident aliens, in short, aliens. That's if they are legal, resident aliens. In another, qualifications of greater importance are required. An alien, therefore, legally incapacitated for certain rights in the latter, may be previous residents only in the former, elude his incapacity, and thus the law of one state be preposterously rendered paramount to the law of another, within the jurisdiction of the other. We owe it to mere casualty. Here casualty means chance. Mere chance that very serious embarrassments on this subject have been hitherto escaped. By the laws of several states, certain descriptions of aliens who had rendered themselves obnoxious. Obnoxious is not the same meaning that we use now, a very unpleasant person. It means somebody that is susceptible to harm, somebody that might be harmed. That's how they would use it in the 17th century. Obnoxious were laid under interdicts inconsistent not only with the rights of citizenship, but with the privileges of residence. What would have been the consequence if such a person, by residence or otherwise, had acquired the character of citizen under the laws of another state, and then asserted their rights as such, both to residence and citizenship within the state prescribing them? Whatever the legal consequences might have been, other consequences would probably have resulted of too serious a nature not to be provided against. The new Constitution has accordingly, with great propriety, made provision against them and all others proceedings from the defect of the Confederation. On this head, by authorizing the general government to establish an uniform rule of naturalization throughout the state, throughout the United States. The next paragraph, the power of establishing uniform laws of bankruptcy is so intimately connected with the regulation of commerce and will prevent so many frauds where the parties or their property may lie or be removed into different states, that the expedience of it seems not likely to be drawn into question. So this is so obvious that we don't even need to talk about it anymore. Here's the next paragraph. The power of prescribing by general laws the manner in which the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of each state shall be proved, and the effect they shall have in other states, is an evident and valuable improvement on the clause relating to this subject in the Articles of Confederation. The meaning of the latter is extremely indeterminate and can be of little importance under any interpretation which it will bear. The power here established may be rendered a very convenient instrument of justice and be particularly beneficial on the borders of contiguous states. Contiguous means those states that are side by side. Like right now, the 48 states of the United States, with the exception of Canada and Hawaii, are contiguous. Okay, I'll continue reading. Where the effects liable to justice may be suddenly and secretly translated in any stage of the process within a foreign jurisdiction. So when you get a record from another state, you want to make sure that you can trust it. Whether it's a transaction, you want if you purchase something, you want the document showing it to be accepted in other states. So he says all of these, a federal government has to set the rules and regulations for us to be able to do commerce, prosper. If we can't trust one another, then we're going to stay weak. The last paragraph, the power of establishing post roads must in every review be a harmless power and may perhaps by judicious management become productive of great public conveniences. Nothing which tends to facilitate the intercourse between the states can be deemed unworthy of the public care. So he says we have to have places where people who deliver post and keep us in communication for another, those places like post offices and post roads should be in charge, should be in the hands of the federal government, because communication between communities is extremely important. And if we don't have the right rules, then we will be really messed up. So that's kind of like people say for the first 7-8 decades in the United States, the only time you would see the hands of federal government inside the states, in other words, federal government, the only thing of federal government you would see were just the post offices, because the states were left on their own for so long that the only thing that was run inside the states by federal government was post offices.